Hello friends and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. If you are new, hi, I'm Korra. I run 3 different niche content websites focused on 3 different areas of passions in my life, and the one that we're going to be focusing on today is Talk Plant to Me. I am beyond obsessed with houseplants and gardening, and I have been having so much fun bringing the content from my websites to life on here. So let's just get into the video because that's why you clicked on it. We are going to be talking about all things pothos. I have said it in short forms on here before, and I will say it again and again and again. If somebody tells you to get a succulent for your first houseplant and not a pothos, they don't want you to succeed. I said it. Adam said it. Pothos are the absolute easiest. Okay, I'm willing to take a philodendron as a tie, but no, I'm not. You know what? Because they're a little bit pickier. Pothos plants are genuinely so simple and easy to care for, and if you get these basics mastered, you can keep one alive. And if you watch a little further, we can talk about how you can make it thrive. Let's get into it. We're gonna start with the biggest question, the biggest category, and that is lighting. And I say it's the biggest because it's definitely the one that you hear about the most, and it's the question you get. But if I'm being honest, pothos lighting is not that big of a deal. They can survive in low lighting situations. They can thrive in proper lighting though. They are fine if you were to put them in a room with no windows and a grow light that you turn on for a couple hours a day, or even honestly a couple hours a week, or if they were to be in a room where generally the blinds were closed, something like that, like a low light room, they will do perfectly fine. But if you can grow them in a bright area, they are going to show you growth like you would not believe. This is my first ever pothos. We call her Jane from Jane the Virgin because so many babies. Here's one of her propagations. There's a huge one that's in this gorgeous plant basket over there that if you go on my shorts, you'll see when I put a bunch of her different propagations into that. And she is a superstar, and honestly, she has had a pretty light-filled life. You're gonna hear the term when people talk about lighting a lot, bright indirect lighting. And yeah, if you Google it, that's what the internet is going to tell you that a pothos needs. But I think that's kind of like a cop-out. And I've used it before on my site too because I did internalize that so few of us understand what that means. And really it means that if you give them too much bright direct sun exposure, they're gonna get sunburnt. There's actually a little bit of it on this leaf here from a previous location that this plant was in, and that's when the leaves start to get a little bit brown, they get a little bit crispy, and just like humans, they get a little bit sunburned from the sun. However, you can combat that by giving them extra water and also by just moving them a couple inches further from a window. As the majority of your spaces in your home are going to provide them bright and direct light. A room with windows that you generally keep open during the day or have a sheer curtain are almost anywhere in that room. Like if there is a shadow that is created from the light, a pothos is going to do really good in that situation. It's not hard. Again, you can go on either ends of the spectrum, but you're not setting yourself up for success. And honestly, it's just easiest to put them in any room that gets a fair amount of light. Let's talk about watering. If you're looking for a blanket rule, water your pothos every 14 days. That's a little bit more than they're going to need in the slow season and a little bit less than they're going to need in growing, aka warm seasons. So summer and spring is when you're going to see growth. You're going to want to water them more so that they can have even more growth, and so that growth has water to pull onto with its new roots. And during the slower months, fall and winter, pulling it back a little bit, you can go. I've gone upwards of a month without watering pothos in the winter, and they do perfectly fine because they're basically dormant. Blanket rule, 14 days. But if you want to pothos to thrive and not just survive, get a moisture meter. I watered my plants yesterday, and I will water my pothos until they're about at the 6, like the middle point on the moisture meter. But ideally, and this is like an actually essential tip, is if you let it get all the way dried out, you're gonna see the most growth and you're gonna avoid root rot. Pothos are susceptible to root rot. Almost no plant is immune. I guess, I don't know if any plant is immune, but some are more likely and some are less likely. Pothos are relatively likely to get root rot. They do not like to have constantly drenched roots. They don't need that. They're not gonna pull that much water. And so their roots will rot out and the plant will die. Let your moisture meter get all the way to red. If you don't want to buy a moisture meter, which I will say they're pretty affordable, I think that one was like $12 on Amazon, you can use your finger. If you stick your finger past your middle knuckle all the way down there, and your tip of your finger can no longer feel any moisture, water them. Again, letting them dry out between is going to promote growth and it's going to prevent root rot. On a similar note, make sure to use draining soil. I doubt you guys are gonna be able to see it, but there's little white balls in here, and that's perlite. And that provides little gaps so the water can continue to filter all the way down and not get stuck right at the roots. I highly recommend doing that, or adding pebbles into the bottom of your plant into the bottom of your pot before you put any soil on top of it. Well, draining, again, is going to help prevent root rot. And I hate root rot. Root rot and me, we're enemies. Since I briefly touched on fertilization, let's talk about that next. You can and probably should fertilize your pothos every 6 weeks during growing seasons, spring and summer. If it is not spring and summer, and you fertilize every 6 weeks, you are risking basically an overindulgence of nutrients that's actually going to kill your pothos. If they are not in a state where they can take on those nutrients because they're not trying to grow more, those nutrients just sit in there and like basically overfeed the mature pothos leaves and stems and roots, and therefore you don't want to do it, okay? We're not gonna fertilize during slow seasons. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't fertilize this girl over here for like 2+ years at a time and saw a lot of growth. You will see more growth with fertilization if that's what you're striving for. But if you just wanna have a beautiful little pothos plant in your house and you don't care about how fast it grows, I wouldn't honestly mess with fertilizing, because it is a little bit of a science and you don't want to risk over fertilizing. There, I said it. Some people might come for me on that. I stand by it. Fertilize every 6 weeks during the summer. You can even go up to every 4 weeks. That's fine. But make sure that they're getting plenty of water and light in addition if you are fertilizing more frequently than every 6 weeks. A slightly gross variation of this, so you can get fertilizer from the store, from a nursery. That is what I use. You mix it into the water, no big deal. But there's another option that I've been getting into, and that is worm castings. Worm castings are not going to have the same risks as using basically chemical fertilizer. They're going to provide the same benefits, and they're also going to help with the drainage because they're basically chunky. You're going to mix them into your soil, not just put them on top. And it's a little bit gross. Like I know some of you are like, Korra, I am not going to put worm castings in there. It works. They also have to deter other pests from your pothos. So just hear me out. Just consider it when we're talking about fertilizing. Think about it. Do a little research yourself and see if you are willing to buy some worm castings and add them into your pothos soil, because then you don't have to fertilize as much or at all, and they have so many other benefits. Next, let's talk about pruning. Pothos get leggy. They got legs for days. They're supermodels, okay? They need to be pruned though, or you're gonna get these like crazy long. I've done a surprisingly good job of keeping up with my pruning, so I don't have a fantastic example right now, but you will get this, like one leg will just continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. And if you wanna do some cool wall designs and such with it, that is awesome. But in order to promote growth throughout the rest of it, the other parts of the plant, you're gonna wanna prune those legs off. If you're looking to do something like those cool Pinterest inspired, like looping it around frames and etc., then you don't need to worry about pruning as much. But if you're wanting that full look within the pot, you're gonna need to prune the leaves. That's simply taking your scissors, and when they get too long, clean shears. I don't even clean mine that often, I'm not gonna lie to you. And you chop them. Another thing with that is if you see a yellow or browning leaf, get rid of them. They don't need to be on there. They're stealing nutrients. Sorry if the angle changed slightly. We are back. Camera died. Now let's get into repotting your pothos. An essential part of having a thriving pothos is going to be repotting them after their insane growth. Pothos grow fast. They grow furiously. We love them for it. But that does mean if you want to continue to see that growth, you got to put them in a bigger pot with fresh soil. So we already talked about the soil recommendations for that, but a few things. I know that often they say to go 1 inch to 2 inches bigger on the pot. I say close to double it on a pothos. as long as you're cautious to not overwater them, they're gonna fill that very quickly. They're gonna have lots of room to grow and thrive. Take the different ones and kind of space them out. I call that my design portion. I highly recommend just going up quite a bit. That being said, do not forget when you are getting your new pot for your pothos, when you're repotting them, that drainage holes are essential for a pothos, okay? During the repotting process, which I've shared some of those in my shorts on here as well, when I repot a pothos plant, make sure that you go in and inspect the roots. If you see anything that is brown and mushy, cut it off. If it looks dead, cut it off. Same thing, you don't need those roots. They're not helping anyone or anything. Get rid of them. So that being said, there's a good chance you're gonna have a hard time getting the original pothos, or the pothos out of its original pot. Don't be afraid to yank. They're sturdy. You're just gonna pull out a whole mesh of roots. They get root bound very quickly. They wrap around each other and they fill the whole pot because of their incredible growth. Let's talk about propagating, and then we're gonna talk about common problems. And I think that's about it for covering how to grow pothos plants. Propagation is one of the most fun parts of plants to me. Like the fact that you can have one pothos and then as a result have as many as you could ever desire is so much fun. Also, it's good for our wallets, my friends. If you want a house full of plants, you can propagate them for free. You're gonna want clean and sharp scissors and then a container to propagate them in. I'm gonna tell you right now, I've tried different propagation methods on pothos. Just water propagate them. They grow like crazy in water propagations. They transition very easily from water propagation into an actual pot. It's no problem. And you do not need to go out and buy propagation jars. You can use any like a glass yogurt jar, like rinse it out, spice jars, they use those all the time. Also, if you are actually wanting one that isn't repurposed from throughout your house, go to thrift stores. They have vases for like so ridiculously cheap. Just any glass vase is gonna work. Don't overthink that. Honestly, don't overthink propagating them in general, but you do need to make sure in order to have it that you have some nodes. People have a lot of different opinions on how many nodes you need. And like, I do agree that more the merrier, but the exact measurements, and I still have 2 leaves, no, it doesn't matter. I'm telling you right now, I've propagated probably 100+ pothos plants in my life. If you were friends with me in real life, you've been given a pothos off of this guy, chances are, but I propagated them with different locations of the nodes related to the leaves. It doesn't really matter. You just need these little brown bumpies. Those are the nodes. That's where the roots are gonna grow. You gotta have some of those in the water in order to have them propagate. This guy's a lot more mature, so the roots, the nodes are a lot bigger. This guy is much younger, but you can still see the little brown bumps right there. Those are the nodes. And that's all you're gonna do, you stick them in water. It depends on the time of the year, but within 2 to 4 weeks, you're gonna see a whole bunch of roots growing, and then you just put those into your wonderful soil mix that you made, stick them into a well-draining pot, and boom, you have as many pothos as you would ever want to have. Now we're gonna talk about pothos problems, or at least the most common ones. I would say the number one most common one is yellowing or browning leaves. Yellow and browning do mean different things though. Yellow usually means that something is wrong with the water. Chances are you are overwatering them, and that has really come to do with pothos. We talked about at the beginning how they do need their soil to be dried out all the way. If you are watering them like every 7 days and like really watering them, that's going to not only eventually lead to root rot, but also in the meantime, it's going to lead to yellow, soggy leaves that are going to fall off, they're going to detach, and they don't look very pretty. So chances are, if you have yellow leaves, the issue is that you're giving them too much water. On the flip side, if you have brown leaves and they're crispy, then they're either getting too much sun exposure or not enough water, and those do go hand in hand. The more sun exposure, the more water that they need. If the leaves are brown and mushy, you probably have root rot that's already taken over, and there isn't that much hope for that plant, I'm not gonna lie to you. Try to chop off some clean leaves for some propagations and then toss the rest of it. It's really not that common though. If you see for them to get all the way up to there, also like you will smell the root rot before the leaves get brown and mushy. Another common problem, of course, is pests. Spider mites, mealybugs, aphids, and gnats, which gnats aren't even that like detrimental to the health of the plants, they're just freaking annoying, are all ones that are very susceptible to our wonderful pothos friends. Neem oil though is going to be your beautiful cure for that. It's natural, it's good for the plant, or it's perfectly fine for the plants. I use it all the time, not an issue. But also if you see a pest infestation, make sure you quarantine that plant. Get it away from all of your other plants before you even bother to treat it. I mean, like immediately, like, oh crap, I see a mealybug. out of here, get that plant moved away from everyone else so that they don't spread, and then check all of your other plants. It's not fun, it's kind of gross. You're gonna find some surprises you might not wanna find, but you gotta do it. Humidity is another problem that can impact your plants. If they are looking a little too droopy or a little bit too crispy, it could be issues with humidity in your air. They do like a humid environment, but too much through manual misting can cause them to get kind of soggy and gross. So if you are misting, take that in mind, and if you're not, also consider that. I know that's not like the most helpful information. Also, you can always DM me on Korra, which is my Instagram, and send me pictures of your plants, and I will try to help you solve problems with them. And lastly, temperature. They are not too dramatic. Generally 60 to 85, if not 90 degrees in your home, they're gonna be totally fine. They will get a little bit sassy if you have them near air vents. In general, I recommend not having plants near air vents or frequently on fans, because that a little bit of movement is good. Like obviously there's wind in nature, right? And some plants like monsteras actually enjoy being shook, and it helps them grow. But the actual temperature of the air that's moving and those drafts will cause you to lose leaves and have some problems. You can pretty much nail down where like the draft is hitting them from that. Keep that in mind. Don't put them near vents, air intakes or outtakes, anything like that. And which shouldn't be too hard to avoid, but it's one of those little things that we don't think about that often, and it can cause you to lose like half of your pothos because they're being dramatic about the air. And again, pothos are less dramatic than most other plants, so just in general, avoid putting your plants near drafts, vents, exterior doors, especially if you live in a colder climate, because even just the brief of the freezing cold air, I'm from Minnesota, I know how cold that air can get, okay? Irregularly like waving onto your plants, I don't know the right terminology to use there, but regularly hitting your plants, those cold bursts of air are potentially going to cause them to basically freeze up and not grow and potentially die. This can handle a lot, but we do want to lower their stress levels. Could you guys help me lower my stress? Actually, plants do totally lower my stress. The only thing I feel like we haven't covered in this video is the types of pothos plants, and that's because I don't have them all. Maybe one day, but there's like at least 15 different varieties. I have 4. How you care for them does not vary drastically. So go ahead and get whatever pothos that calls to your heart. Neon ones are really cool. This is a classic jade. This is a satin. I'm not even 100% sure what this one is. It was given to me and it kind of looks like 3 different variations. Like these leaves look so different than these ones. So I'm not really even positive. If you have any pothos questions that I didn't cover, make sure to leave them in the comments and I will get back to everybody, or at least try my darndest. I hope that you are enjoying being a plant parent and that you love the beautiful pothos houseplants even half as much as I do. I hope you're having a wonderful day as well, and bye.